dialogues, peace negotiations, should the environment also have a central stage? And then after a peace agreement is signed, how natural resource management and natural resources play a role in post-conflict reconstruction. So it goes also along the way, along the frameworks of environmental governance, environmental law development, and even transitional justice and environment. This is quite new. Was it the evolution is also included? Yeah, it's included. Yeah. So, yeah, this is going back like 5 years when I started the PhD. So I hope I remember all of the theories and papers, reviewing papers. But this started like from the. I always say that there's two sides of the coin. So the first one, almost 40 years ago, was the resource curse. So probably you've heard Collier and others that says that the countries that had the most valuable natural resources are the ones where more conflicts emerge. So then the metrics were revised, and it was not that much that there are high or rich resources, but the way those were managed. And then it turns, like the environmental peacebuilding field started more like on environmental peacemaking. And then again, this other side of the coin, how environmental challenges that are common could open ways or a more neutral space to start dialogue. So, and then, so this was, the start was more from the environmental security side. And then there was an evolution on transboundary environmental peacebuilding. So how, for example, shared water basins at the transboundary level, like interstate, could make peace agreements. And so all of the field of water diplomacy fills in. And that's one of the fields that are more developed because they have like protocols to negotiate around water, etc. Then some initiatives by UNEP on after the Cold War started looking at the role of environmental governance and assessments on first how the nature was affected after conflict, and then all of the work of environmental governance for post-conflict reconstruction. So a lot of work from Karl Bruch from the Environmental Peacebuilding Association on I don't know, in many cases like Liberia, that how they develop forest governance law to consolidate the peace agreement. Some experiences from Philippines where Leo was present also. Afghanistan as well, so like stabilization, using the environment as a way to stabilize countries. And recently, there has been more development on intra-state environmental peace building, so like community level natural resource management to consolidate, let's say, local peace agreements to stop deforestation, such as the work that SLAUS is developing. And now, like, there is this challenge of connecting the local and national environmental peace building processes. Yeah.
Thank you, Hector. Leonardo, from your perspective, what gaps in environmental and security research lead to the emergence and development of environmental peace building?
Thank you, Lisette, for that question. Yeah, so I see environmental peace building as sort of a response to the field of ecological security, which back in the 90s really much looked at how environmental degradation and the presence of natural resources somehow led to conflict. And environmental peace building sort of led that evolution that Hector just described as a sort of counter argument to the view of linkages between environmental degradation and the supposed automatic emergence of conflict, right? And I want to highlight there like around 4 or 5 issues that overall international research community and beyond only the research community started criticizing from the ecological security field. First, it's the trend in the ecological security field to sort of see environmental degradation as a sort of automatic source of conflict, right? This is often called a determinist or neo-Malthusian approach, whereby the degradation of natural resources will automatically, for some reason, lead to more destabilization, right, or a disruption of social order, and then threats to the international order. And this is somehow rooted in the fact that ecological security very often ignores the fact that conflicts are very complex, right? And that they are rooted in social, political, cultural, and economic perceptions of marginalization, right? That act as the actual drivers of conflict. And so at times, especially back in the 90s and early 2000s, ecological security basically tried to find a direct causality between environmental degradation and conflict, while ignoring all of those underlying drivers to what that environmental degradation actually interacts with in very complex ways. Another issue that was found is that there was a risk of the securitization of the environment. If you believe that environmental degradation necessarily leads to conflict, then an obvious response is to use environmental degradation as a sort of early warning for conflict. And what does that mean in the majority of countries out there? To deploy security forces, of military forces of some form, right? Because it is public and national security policy that responds to those sort of threat. And in fact, even in international community today, for example, NATO, ecological security, climate security is very much discussed as a threat multiplier. Most times, which it's a very relevant discourse, but it somehow also ignores the fact that, well, it's not necessarily a threat multiplier. It can be other forms of multiplier, like, for example, collaboration multiplier. One thing that I want to highlight here also is that ecological security, studying the linkages between environmental degradation and conflict, has been criticized as having somewhat of racialized assumptions, right? Or just simply put, having racist perceptions of social orders in the global south mostly, right? Under this perception, researchers, mostly in the global north, are somewhat thinking, well, of course, obviously environmental degradation will lead to conflict because uncivilized nations that rely pretty much on natural resources will not be able to maintain a social order under the absence of those resources, right? Which of course is not the case at all, actually, also now proven from an empirical perspective. And last thing I want to highlight here is that ecological security, when you pretty much focus on conflict emerging in the context of environmental degradation, tends to see all sorts of social instability as negative, right? It's even non-violent protest as something to watch out for, right? Because it is a form of instability, right? And it tries to connect environmental degradation to instability. And that in many ways does not really relate to experiences of people, of activists, of just community members who are actually experiencing environmental degradation, in that sense that, well, there's many processes of societal instability that actually lead to outcomes related to social justice, right? Ideally non-violent processes, but even those that actually contain different degrees of violence have led to different forms of social justice, right? And I think the environmental peacebuilding field was a response sort of to see all of that, all of those opportunities to really start understanding societal responses at multiple levels of governance, more from a positive ontology perspective, if we want to call it, right? Or like recognizing that there's always, all the time, peace processes going on at all levels of society. Yeah. Thank you. You want to say the next question?
Okay, now that we have a clear message about what environmental peace building is, Hector, what are some of the main principles of environmental peace building field today, and how are those principles relevant to biodiversity conservation and climate action?
Yeah. So this one is like a more normative question, and then it takes it out only as a research approach, but also like on the practitioner side, and so that is also why I think this COP is really interesting, because it's a way of like making peace with nature, the discourse that the Colombian government is putting out there is also recognize all of this development of this research field, and but they also introduce this spiritual connection or these learnings from the indigenous and farmer knowledge on making peace with nature, in the sense that economic developments and inequalities or these extractive models have damaged the ecosystem so much that it's important to reconcile and to think a different way. So that's another side of the environmental peace building. But in general, we say that the first one is inclusive participation, and how that is related to biodiversity and climate action is that the knowledge of indigenous populations, Afro communities, farmers, on managing biodiversity, on relating to the ecosystems, is critical for biodiversity protection, and also biodiversity as a solution for climate mitigation and all of what nature-based solutions has on the field of climate action. Then we have environmental justice, meaning that there is many inequalities and marginalization that also produce conflicts, like many political conflicts had to do with marginalization. So environmental justice brings this perspective of, for example, multinational corporation paying liabilities for their damage to ecosystems, also having on the political level, the way natural resources are managed in an equitable way. Yeah, so that's one of the perspectives. And so biodiversity also includes that the people that is on this ecosystem that are conserving the forest can also use in a more sustainable way forest, and also need somehow funds from these international streams to be able to do the work that they do to remain in the buffer areas of protected zones, etc. Then there is conflict sensitivity, and this is critical because much of the work of biodiversity conservation and climate action is happening on conflict-affected contexts. So, and people, environmental scientists, biologists, they are working on conflict areas, sometimes interacting with armed actors, and sometimes they need a bit more tools and capacities to deal with this ongoing violence, and also to prevent that any action that even is well-intended can create more conflict. So conflict sensitivity lenses are critical. Then within environmental peace building, as Leo said, trust and cooperation are at the core, because it's like it's a process. So the environmental side is probably, I don't know, enhancing biodiversity protection, maybe carbon sinks, but the peace building side is a process, and it's a way of first sharing information, then enabling trust within the practitioners, the communities, the government, and then once a level of trust is reached, then you can work together and cooperate. And all of this also has embedded the addressing root causes of conflict. Some of the causes of conflict, as I already said, had to do with marginalization, with lack of livelihoods, with a lack of inclusive participation, and then guaranteeing and ensuring co-benefits on the realm of environment protection, development gains, peace-building outcomes, that are all embedded into negotiation of conservation and peace building.
Okay, thank you, Hector. Now, Leonardo, do you think that there are any significant gaps that are particularly relevant to the protection of biodiversity and peace building?
Yes, thank you, Lisette. Yeah, so I just want to give a word of caution here, because it's a very hard question to answer, because I believe environmental peace building has more research gaps or more knowledge gaps than actual knowledge consensus out there. So I'm going to try to summarize some of the core things out there. But again, this is a very young research field. So if anybody also feels the need to complement, please go ahead after my response. I want to start first by, well, acknowledging the what we call the environmental peace building mechanisms, which is the thing that like Hector just summarized, like the different pathways through which environmental action can lead to peace. And this indeed have been like shown through a diversity of case studies and actual empirical evidence through different contexts, right? But the main thing, the main gap that we have as a field is that we haven't had enough actual systematization into learning what actually works and what doesn't work, and under which circumstances and context. Probably the most systematized analysis of this was sort of like a meta-analysis of 80 case studies, 80 empirical actual research projects that was conducted back in 2021, so already getting a little bit outdated, and it used 80 case studies, and I'll just give you some examples of these. So that this study found that 70% of these case studies actually created some form of positive peace outcomes. 70%, that's already pretty good, right? These again are like a meta-analysis of like a review of other empirical case studies, right? However, let's now go into the more nuanced numbers, right? Only 25% of them actually unambiguously said that they created positive peace outcomes. All of the other, like 50% of the total amount, created some form of positive outcome over or a dimension of peace, but created a negative outcome over another form of peace. So had a form of unintended consequence that they weren't really expecting, right? And even more importantly, 20 to 30% of the outcomes out there, of the analysis out there, had actual negative consequences over the place where they were trying to intervene. So they actually triggered more conflict that was already present. They failed to create peace. It means that there's over 80% of actual environmental peace building efforts create some form, even when creating positive peace, positive forms of peace, create some form of unintended consequence. And so it's very, very important that we start looking at what exactly are the conditions and the factors that lead to environmental cooperation, environmental projects having unintended consequences. And for me, that is the biggest research, let's say big research question. But of course, this is my personal opinion. And in order to do this, we need a lot more systematization, right? Yes, we need more case studies because this is usually the main way of doing research in environmental peace building, but we need to find ways in which we can compare between those case studies. And for that, I have basically three fronts in which we need to expand as a field. The first of them is at the thematic front. Most environmental peace building research is conducted on ecosystem conservation, water management, mostly in cross-border settings, and lately more and more, which is very good, agroecological resilience. This is, of course, very good topics, and we should continue to explore them in more depth, but they're not the only planetary boundaries, let's call them, right, that should be the focus on, or the under environmental issue that we face under the Anthropocene. For example, we need more research on pollution, nutrient cycles, fisheries and and marine ecosystems, and disaster risk reduction, just to name a few of the examples. The other front in which we need to expand is the regional front. Environmental peace building field is an extremely concentrated field of research in just very few countries. I'll just give you the Latin American example. Just for the amount of studies in Colombia are more than double than all of the other Latin American countries combined, right? So this is like, it's extremely focused in Colombia, the whole field, and it's basically non-existent in all of the other Latin American countries. Now, there's of course a reason for this, right? And just in the previous panel, we saw how this topic is just so relevant for the Colombian experience and the Colombian context. But that doesn't mean that the other countries in Latin America are not facing basically all of the insecurity issues that are also present here to very similar extents, right? Even those countries that are not classified as post-conflict. And so we need to diversify regionally. And lastly, very much related to this, it's the conceptual front. I believe we need to then start understanding peace through definitions, through concepts that go beyond the the traditional understandings of peace put forward by the peace and conflict studies, right? And so we need to start understanding peace as experienced by actual local populations, by developing what is sometimes referred to as in the literature as everyday peace indicators. I believe then researchers can then design projects or methods to measure peace, either qualitative, quantitative, hopefully mixed methods, that then come up with understandings, measurements of peace as experienced by those on the territory. And what I believe this would allow is that if we have these indicators then at the research level, at the international research level, we can then compare these indicators by categorizing them according to whatever conceptual framework we want to use, thereby allowing for more systematization. Sorry, I extended a little bit.
Thank you, Leonardo. Julian or Chris, do you have any comment about this discussion? No? Okay. Now I like to shift the focus to Chris, who is an expert in water management. And I just want to center in what's happening with water as a case study. So Chris, what are the most common social conflicts related to water use and management, and how they affect society?
Thanks very much. I think it's pretty obvious that conflict over water resources is a key issue, but we can break it down. There's first of all conflict over the quantity of water. So we know that, for example, agriculture uses 70% of all water withdrawn from rivers around the world. There are many places where there's not enough water in rivers and lakes to provide for a growing human population. So the quantity of water is a big issue, pretty obvious. But there's also the quality of the water. Sometimes societies knowingly and sometimes unknowingly make use of rivers to actually carry away their waste and to treat pollution for them. It's built into the fabric of our economies that if you discharge sewage from a city into the river, you have in your head, you know that the river's going to repair that and treat that water as it goes down towards the sea. And by the time it gets to the sea, it's a lot better. But basically, you're relying on the service provided by the river to carry away pollutants and so on. But it causes problems. There are many places where, for example, you can't irrigate with the water because it's full of bacteria. And you irrigate these bacteria and viruses onto the crops, and then people get sick. And I know piggeries where pigs, they have to wash the pigs regularly, and dairies have to wash the udders of the cows, and they get contaminated because the water had bacteria and viruses in it, and so that then causes problems for piggeries and dairies. So, and obviously people drinking water, and especially in really rural communities where they're reliant on domestic water from the rivers, it's a problem. And it's been a problem forever. Even in Plato, in 2,500 years ago, he talked about the user pays principle. That people need to actually, if people are polluting the river, they need to actually do something to fix it up. Even way back then, they were talking about that. But there are also many other benefits of rivers, of intact river ecosystems that could cause conflict as well. But I want to sort of turn it around a little bit and actually talk more about the conflict that we have with the ecosystem. Because we come from a history where we basically had we thought we had unlimited resources, so we just took. And we've established a conflict and a tension between us and the ecosystem. So there's one really wonderful practice which has become really mainstream in water resource management, and that's called the management of environmental flows, e-flows. And basically the concept is that it's the amount of water and the quality of water that you have to maintain in a river to keep the ecosystem alive so that people benefit. So it's a lovely sort of holistic way of how you manage a river, because you have to keep the river in good condition, biodiversity-wise, ecosystem function-wise, so that people can benefit. So it really brings that whole thing to the forefront. But there are many benefits associated with rivers, from So I've mentioned a couple, but there's carbon sequestration, there's regulation of flooding, there's provision of fish and riparian vegetation for hut building and all sorts of things. So many, many things, and these conflicts can become quite severe, but with people fighting over resources, but also with the ecosystem itself. And just to give you one example, we did an environmental flow study for the inner Niger Delta in Mali in Africa. So just imagine this is a huge river that rises in the mountains of West Africa, and it flows out into the Sahara Desert. So it's a big river in a desert. And there's a big floodplain called the inner Niger Delta, and there are 2 million people that live on that floodplain with a couple of million stock as well, cattle and goats, and they are totally reliant every year on that river flooding the floodplain to replenish the ground with water for grass growth, for cattle, and they grow vegetables. As the flood, so it floods during the year, and then it slowly recedes like this, and they follow the receding water, planting crops as it goes all the way down. 2 million people, and sometimes the flood hardly arrives because of drought, and that's a big issue. But now, upstream, they want to take the water out for irrigation, agriculture, which for the country is really nice because it makes lots of money because for the irrigation agriculture. But every drop they take out is going to be less drop for those 2 million people down there, most of whom don't have a voice. So somebody published a book called Living on the Edge. I have never seen a society that's living so close to the edge as those poor people living on that floodplain. Thank you.
Okay, Chris. How does the health of rivers and proper management of water resources impact society?
So the health of rivers is really important, and I just want to sort of raise the concept of people talk about the classification of the health, and it's quite useful to actually classify, is a river healthy or is it unhealthy? And a healthy river generally will be healthy for the ecosystem, but also healthy for society. With a few exceptions, like, for example, a virus or bacterium that makes you sick may not make the ecosystem sick. But chances are it comes with a whole lot of sewage as well, which has caused other problems. But in general, healthy rivers support healthy societies. And so there are many efforts around the world to actually monitor river health, where you monitor the quantity of water, the quality of water, the shape of the river, the sediment movement through, and then all the what we call response indicators, the health of the fish, the health of the invertebrates, the health of the vegetation. But overall, the overall health of the ecosystem, it's a really, really useful integrator with society. And this can become a really dominant thing. And in the Lesotho Highlands in southern Africa, we also did an e-flow study there, where the health of the river was central to management of the water resources. Because in this particular example, they are building great big dams in the uplands of where all the rain falls, and taking the water out and pumping it across the mountains to South Africa. So the people downstream of the dam are now losing their healthy river, they're losing water resources, and they're losing all the benefits. So the government now pays compensation to the people based on what they've lost. And it's all the aspects. So for example, fish used to be a primary source of protein for them. That's now under threat, so the government's got to give them money to replace their protein source. And so it goes on. Every single one of the benefits of the river, of a healthy river, has been compromised by the upstream dam building, and they now have to actually pay out and support those. So the health of a river is a really key issue, and there's a big program on at the moment. The WWF and EMI are both involved, trying to actually motivate for a global river health program initiative. There's smatterings of this in the CBD and in the SDGs and so on, but not yet comprehensive enough. Thank you.
Okay, last question, and I think that is the most important question for me, is that do you think that raising awareness of conflict related to natural resource scarcity or unsustainable use is currently integrated into their management and research?
Yeah, awareness raising around this whole thing is crucial, and the function of the Biodiversity Convention and the SDGs and so on, and helping to raise the concept of biodiversity and ecosystem health, and building that into country policy is all really, really significant. But I think governments need to take the next step, and meeting the MBSAPs and so on is one thing. But when you're actually managing a water resource, you need to manage it more intensively than anything you're reporting to the SDGs or the NBSAPs. It's much more important that you get close to the ground and you monitor the condition of the ecosystem directly related to the society that's benefiting from it. And so it's really important to have set targets at a local level which are meaningful, really meaningful for management. One of the problems is that the whole concept of ecosystem health and the interaction of society is so complex, and it seems to be so big that individuals don't seem to have any ability to change things. So people suffer from a degraded environment, and they just throw their hands up because they don't know what to do. It's too complex. Nowadays, they just blame it on climate change, which makes it even more complex. You got no way to actually impact on that. The one thing that we're doing at the moment, which is really, really exciting, is we're building what we call a digital twin, where we bring all of the data and everything around biodiversity, water, people, everything, all onto a single management platform sort of based on the most up-to-date technological advancements, the key of which is we built AI. So ChatGPT built into this, so you can actually sit and you can ask it a question, even with your voice. But type out a question, show me where is there water available today in the basin, and it'll give you a map showing you where all the water is available today. Okay, show me the trend of those quantities of water over the last year. I want to know if it's getting worse. And it draws you a map, a graph, showing you the trend. And you can say, tell me in 3 months' time, what's going to be the availability of water at this site in 3 months' time? And it'll tell you based on forecast of weather over the next 3 months, and it'll forecast how much water is going to be available. And you can do it verbally. You can ask it to write it as a report. You can say, give me a 20-page report. I need to give it to my minister describing the water resource catastrophe in this basin, and it'll write you a report. You know what ChatGPT is like. It's crazy. And so this is now AI coming to management of natural resources. It is so exciting, so exciting.
Thank you, Chris. Julian, Leonardo, and Hector, do you have any comment about the Chris words?
No, because I find it really interesting the example that you mentioned on the river in Africa. Was it Sudan or in Mali? Yeah, because we actually were working on a report on a lessons learned from an implementation that the UNEP did together with practical action on a very similar description of what you mentioned in a Wadi El Ku in Darfur in Sudan. So basically they were doing water catchments with really basic technology where the community were building peace committees and like water governance management committees to manage these catchment infrastructures, so they can also have crops there in the dry season. So it was both like building climate resilience and then solving conflicts between pastoralists and farmers along the Wadi. And even after the war started last year, the communities owned that so much that they were protecting the infrastructures and just basically pushing out the RSF to some point. Now the armed actors just displaced all of these communities, but it was a really concrete example working around a river. And also there is a couple of examples here in Colombia on, for example, Cauca River is, has like rights, so on this development of nature having their own rights, a transitional justice mechanism, the Justicia Especial para la Paz, like peace jurisdiction for peace. They granted Cauca River recognition of rights, and they are now trying to make compensations for the communities that are along this river. So it's kind of a concrete examples on environmental peace building and water management. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now I will the floor to Leonardo, who will explore future perspective in this area.
Thank you, Lisette. If I may just also add super briefly to your intervention, Chris, and also adding on Hector's comment, because so from my perspective, I've tried to sort of understand environmental peace building processes from a locally led adaptation perspective. So like initiatives or programs that actually comply with the global principles of locally led adaptation. Because it was like for me like an obvious place to start in conflict sensitivity programming. But in fact, I was quite surprised that at least the case study that we've seen in Kenya under the County Climate Change Fund mechanism, which is the only locally led adaptation policy instrument out there in the country, is that while it does a great job at increasing a sense of representation and collaboration and cohesion within the community, it's often that this very much focus on locally led, that then it ends up being only the community focus, right? While especially contexts like Kenya and well, many others, right? It's very much a landscape or an inter-community conflict dynamics that needs to be somewhat addressed. And the challenges of sort of translating locally led, fostering representation, legitimacy, while keeping a landscape, or in your case, a watershed approach, I find them extremely challenging for actual practitioners' organizations. I don't yet have like the solution to that, but this is like, I believe, next step in, at least with this organization wants to do in terms of like taking this locally led approach to the landscape level. And what does that mean in terms of still being locally led, right? Yeah. I don't know if you want to say anything before we go with Julian, or no, that's all good? Perfect. So we have identified some of the thematic gaps, right? Regional thematic gaps in environmental peace building. And I think, Julian, you're pretty much positioned to tell us some of the very clear gaps that we've seen in the field, especially here in Latin America, right? And so we wanted to know, like, considering the specific dynamics of violence and organized crime in the Latin American region, what gaps do you think environmental peace building research should prioritize to effectively guide future studies?
Thank you, Leo. So first, today we're launching a policy brief, which we published jointly with UNDP. We will talk about it later in more depth. But basically, it's to understand the opportunities, challenges, and gaps of environmental peace building, specifically in Latin America and the Caribbean. Let's say that, for example, what you were explaining us, Chris, on water management, water scarcity, it's an important issue in, let's say, Middle East, or for example, North of Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa. Most of conflicts in Latin America and the Caribbean are not triggered necessarily by water scarcity. In fact, most of violent places or places in Latin America suffering from crime or environmental crime are not places in which there are troubles of water scarcity. So our question was, how does environmental peace building looks and natural resource management looks specifically in Latin America and the Caribbean? So the first thing related to a comment that Leo said before is this importance of understanding that most research nowadays is focused on this idea of social relations as inherently agonistic, which for me is really dangerous. It's really important to understand how, or at least what I believe, that human relations are cooperative, inherently cooperative, rather than agonistic. But rather than that, also Leo mentioned how Colombia is the focus is a focus of literature and research in Latin America and the Caribbean, which is obvious because of the it seems obvious because of the specific context and particularities of Colombia, and the exceptions of environmental peace building research in other parts of Latin America, for example, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Mexico, are more focused to water management precisely, especially transboundary water management. So how does environmental peace building should look for us? That was the question we asked ourselves. So first thing is to some of the gaps we identified is the fact that environmental peace building in Latin America has not explored forms of violence different from traditional understandings of conflict. So in Colombia, it's pretty easy to recognize that we are in a conflict, or that we are on a post-conflict scenario. But in other parts of Latin America, it's not that way. Usually, the other countries in Latin America are more focused in crime, transnational organized crime, urban violence, environmental crime. So these are what we identified is that there are gaps on understanding how a natural resource management can help not only in context of conflict or post-conflict, but also context of violence in general. For example, gender-based violence or organized crime. So I seize the moment to also invite you to an event that we're going to have at 2 p.m. here at the CG Pavilion, in which we're going to explore some practices of social cohesion and ecosystem resilience in order to prevent environmental crime, specifically in the Amazon. Why? Because in Colombia we talk about a conflict easily, but if we actually take a deeper look, the violence and organized crime in the Amazon countries, for example, Brazil, Ecuador, or Colombia, it pretty looks the same. So, but in Brazil, we are not going to talk about conflict, real conflict, in a traditional way. You're going to talk about organized crime or transnational crime. So how to foster this kind of initiatives to actually tackle a crime or violence, regarding of if it is conceptualized as conflict, as traditional conflict or not. Also, there are some specificities of the region that are not shared or not in the same level with other parts of the world. For example, huge socioeconomic inequalities, political exclusion, institutional mistrust, transnational criminal organizations, including mining or drug trafficking, land grabbing dynamics, and violence against environmental activists, which is something that is really important and that has been largely discussed during COP16. So we understand that there are some opportunities in our research group that we need to foster. Most of these opportunities are related to local, to understanding local and indigenous knowledge and conceptions of for integrating environmental management and into peace-building initiatives. This would enable grassroots solutions, which is what we're aiming to do. But we also have some challenges to do that. The first one is to have methodologies, something Leo said before, specifically qualitative or quantitative or mixed methodologies that can specifically measure peace outcomes. It's something that is not always easy to do, and it's something that we need to keep exploring on. Second thing is consider the limitations of deep regional structural issues of violence. Let's say we cannot be naive enough to think that fostering this kind of environmental or resource management strategies are going to tackle deep structural problems, right? Then something that seems obvious from the research part, but is not on the policy making part, is the idea of going to more bottom-up perspectives and approaches rather than top-down. So to conclude, basically, the recommendations is to produce stronger locally based evidence, which is something that we need to do, cooperating with other, in general, with other researchers. For example, the researchers that presented in the last event. It's something that we need to continue with these conversations, to have locally based evidence, and also to explore approaches and measure methods that actually address underlying political and structural drivers of insecurity. Not only and to know exactly what are we talking when we are talking about peace outcomes.
Thank you, Julian. I think you've highlighted here two things that are quite relevant also in light of our next intervention by Lisette. Well, one of them is one of the thorns of environmental peace building, which is really like looking at conceptualizations of peace that go beyond community cohesion and start looking at more like broader, wider governance systems and society, like for example, institutional corruption, right? Huge gap there, research gap on how those environmental action can contribute to the strengthening of wider institutional and governance systems in tackling impunity, for example. I don't think anybody can answer fully that question, but I think it's a huge thing to look into. And second, the part of like actually measuring it, right, and measuring peace, which I think it's crucial and also one of the widely recognized issues in environmental peace building. And but luckily we have Lisette here, who is actually an expert with methodological approaches in environmental peace building. So Lisette, what do you think? Like, what methodological and theoretical perspectives can be integrated into the field of environmental perspective with the eyes into the future?
I think that I can list at least 3 different perspectives that from my point of view, are important to include now in the field of environmental peace building. The first one is regarding to the adoption of natural resource management strategies or agricultural practices that we say that contribute to peace. And especially because now we found that one of the most important adoption factor is related with technological transfer. But if we see in the reality how the agricultural practices are promoted, we see that now we only say the producers are only receiving this information, but we are not exploring their current necessities. So I think that one of the most important points is just explore what are the adoption factors, the natural resource management and agricultural practices that we are demonstrating that have social co-benefits in peace building. Another point is this intersectional analysis, particularly focusing on gender. For me, this gender topic is still a gray area in environmental peace building, especially to explore how various forms of inequality intersect and how these affect the different perception of peace that exists based on those perspectives. Finally, I believe that it's important to incorporate, as Julian said, more quantitative analysis and mixed method approaches. And it's very important to start to to collect data that enable us to explore the different peace perspectives that we are working with Hector and Augusto in the SLUS project. Also now in the COP and in the different discussions that we has been taking along the week, I also noticed that there is a necessity to quantify the impact of conflict on natural resources and how to quantify them. So I'm a social scientist, but a very quantitative scientist, so for me it's very important to start to explore numbers and quantify social indicators and quantify adoption factors and quantify this gap to make a gap analysis between the different gender approaches.
Thank you, Lisette. And I think the challenge there is how to adopt quantitative or mixed methods approaches while still maintaining this everyday understanding, right? Which is sort of what diversifying conceptualizations of peace would imply, understanding peace as defined by those who experience it, while still we need to somehow quantify that. It's extremely hard, but yeah, I think the environmental peace building field is certainly working in that direction.
That someone is going to say that peace cannot be measured.
I'm often one of those, I have to say. Yeah. Well, for now, thank you all our panelists for their responses. We still actually have several minutes for engagement with the audience. So, in case anybody has any questions or would like to give a comment on one of the contributions from one of our panelists, I open the floor.
Okay, hi. Thank you for all the speakers for great insights. I'm just wondering whether you've ever considered the rights of nature concept as a way of peace building, environmental peace building specifically, and because there are so many South American countries that have adopted it. So yeah, just throwing it out there.
That's a bit what I was mentioning, but I didn't want to take that much time on the Cauca River. So it's a river that crosses all of Colombia, and now it's being granted with rights of nature as a victim of the armed conflict. And of course, nature can't speak for itself, but the communities that depend on this river are trying to put the case on this special jurisdiction for peace. And there is lots of opportunities on global initiatives for restoration that can also contribute to restorative justice after conflict. So as a way of compensation of the damages to the river, former combatants can commit to protect the river, can do community work, and also it becomes ecosystem restoration becomes also a way to restore the social fabric and relations. There's a lot of symbolic on this, and that's something that can also even be measured with the advance of the restoration initiatives. But the thing is that it takes a lot of time. So it's not like a one-off intervention and then we already recover the health of a river or of a basin, but it's like decades. So it's like a prolonged time and not so easy to measure in one specific project. So that's also why needs for investment on this is really important.
Yeah, just a quick intervention. So something that I didn't explore much, but I think it's a big opportunity of environmental peace building in general, but also in Latin America, is the fact that is the idea of focusing more on understanding local and indigenous conceptions. So obviously, focusing on that would give other understandings of nature and others' understanding of nature that would eventually be considered in law or in other or in legal matters.
Leo, super interesting that you mentioned these statistics around peace building, environmental peace building, more of the research here in Colombia. Why is that happening, in your opinion? And probably that's something that is influencing what is happening now in this COP with the concept of peace with nature. Maybe what you can give us some insights on the reasons behind all these statistics.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Augusto. There are several reasons why the environmental peace building field is so concentrated in specific countries, including Colombia, but not only Colombia. In the case of Latin America, it's the Colombia, and there's even a concept there in the field of the Colombianization of environmental peace building, right? They call it because it's just so prevalent, it's so much there, and it always ends up being an example of something, right? And I think, mainly it is because Colombia's government has been so receptive of the concept and of the field. First of all, let's start there. And it was, since the peace agreement, one of the main examples, not the only one, of course, but the main example, one of the main examples, and to this day, the core-sided example of a peace agreement that really transversalized environmental management issues across the whole thing, and specifically dedicating a chapter for it, and recognizing access to land and territorial management and environmental justice as a core issue as part of the peace building process. And that then made all of the environmental peace building research field basically like flow to Colombians, like, yes, we want to look into it, right? With good reason, of course, right? This is not a critique, this is a very good thing. But it is not the only reason why the field is so much concentrated. For example, also in Kenya, it's another one of the countries where it's like by one of the focus. I think it is because it's very hard to do environmental peace building in those settings that are extremely fragile, right? Like, how do you do research in those settings, right? And so in many instances, researchers just go to where they can go and do what they can do according to security, according to resources, according to funds that they have, and to the partners that they manage to create in the context of research. And once you start doing that, it's sort of like a reinforcing cycle, whereby these countries just made the first publications, and then, okay, let's just continue doing it there because it's just possible, right? So there is some form of like inertia towards just doing it in the same. And the last one is that it's the ones that it has been proven to work. So there is a very strong bias in the field towards selecting case studies where you know what you will find. And this is a huge thing, right? Both in the ecological security and in the environmental peace building, there is a need to really prove what is not working. And this is an issue because most research is actually funded by practitioner organizations which are looking for positive outcomes, right? They are looking for outcomes. And so there's very little opportunity to actually look at the bad and the negative and the dark side of environmental peace building, which is a whole concept also. Yeah, sorry, you wanted to say something?
No, I want to say also that a lot of things, and I think you know it for your own experience, is that the peace building, the peace agreement opened the field here in Colombia. So it brought, not like, I would say like tourist research somehow, like some people that were just, I'm going to write my master thesis there because in Colombia is fun also. So it has a good vibe. So what can I say? So it opened the way. But definitely there's a need to do a lot more research on other Latin American countries, because everything around critical minerals, for example, as a source of conflict, and how environmental peace building can be an approach to deal with that, with climate action, etc. So.
Please. I would say that one of the key reasons for this emergence of the environmental peace building concept in Colombia is because in the COP15 in Copenhagen, the ex-president at that time mentioned that there is a relationship between El Programa de Familias Guardabosques, a program for conserving forests, but actually a program for eradicating coca leaf, was also contributing to reduction of emissions. And a lot of scientists started to work on that case. The perspective of that approach was security, but then it turned into environmental peace building because of the peace agreement. But at the beginning, what triggers everything was actually el presidente Uribe de ese momento, with a different perspective that then switched into what we know now that is happening here with Peace with Nature.
Just something I want to raise is, I've seen too often in Africa that the concept of rights for nature is so antagonistic to governments. Basically, they say, when the people have got, if there's anything left, nature can have. That's the general attitude. It's not working within the capacity of the ecosystem. The ecosystem comes last. And how do you get over that?
Thanks. That was really nice set of interventions from everybody. I have a question about evidence. So how does peace building actually intersect with climate resilience? Is there evidence in this intersection? How strong is it that local climate action, that efforts to build resilience across time scales for different types of farming systems, for example, actually also deliver peace outcomes?
So I think that there is evidence. There are many studies that from Buchard, researchers on climate security. They definitely mention that the areas that are more fragile and that are more exposed to impacts of climate change are the ones where there is more evidence that through intersecting variables like food insecurity, there is conflict. So, but that can be seen from the other side, and is that, of course, in areas that have more stable governance mechanisms and where there is higher indicators of peace. So works on like quantitative works, like from the Institute of Economy. So, do you know what I mean, Leo?
Sorry again.
The Economic Institute of this
Peace,
Australian of Peace.
Economic Institute of Peace, that they have like the global index of
so
peace.
there is the World Index, and their peace building countries had also a higher ecological resilience. So and then I think that's quite intuitive, but it's also like how peace building tools can facilitate climate action. So you also need not only the sound scientific expertise on the environmental and agricultural science, but more partnerships with peace-building organizations to enable coordination between sectors, even being able to negotiate with armed actors at some point to make conservation, to make communities more resilient, both to the climate impacts, but also to illegal economies, for example. So, yeah.
If I may just very briefly complement. So the environmental peace building field is, again, a theoretical field made up of like several theories of change, right? Connecting environmental action and peace building. Somewhat like 25 theories of change have been identified, and it's, of course, this is not a consensus. But in general, if we may categorize them as in some form, you can say that they look at state-society relations, peace, cohesion and trust building between social groups, either horizontal or vertical. And then prevention, institutional capacities for the prevention of conflict, so what we call really like negative peace. And lastly, sort of, which is a little bit more ambiguous, the building of capabilities, a concept of capability somewhat like people's actual, capacities and tools and resources that they have at their hand to actually build the life that they wanna lead, in response to the different environmental and conflict-related threats that are facing them, right? And it is here, I think, in this last one, where resilience becomes not only a very big part of it, but like the key concept that the capabilities approach to development and to peace looks into. But then again, there is also a lot of other research. A lot more is needed, but there is already a lot of research, as Hector was already saying, whereby the building of resilience through, for example, agroecological systems are fostering all of the other forms of peace that we are saying, especially intercommunity trust and cohesion, and specifically through some programs, better state presence and or state-society relations, which translates into political legitimacy, right? But that one is way harder to achieve through resilience, I have to say, because usually government involvement implies unintended consequences, right? But yeah, there is already a lot of resilience out there. The resilience concept is there. Yeah. Let me know that we're out of time. Yeah, you wanna just give a. Okay, so we're now gonna go into the next into our next session, which pretty much builds upon this one, right? If I understand, but I'm gonna let my colleague Ignacio here introduce it. Thank you very much for the. Oh, yeah, of course, a few minute transition, obviously. And thank you very much for your attention and for the discussion. Yeah.